The default thinking that every person should have should be that every app a kid uses has a doorway to the internet, to a hidden Google search bar that they don't know about. That should be the default thinking until you prove otherwise. Because 9 out of 10 apps that are on all the iPhones or Android devices that are, in this room right now, I bet I could get to a Google search bar that will not obey many of the other parental controls you may be enabled on the device, like restrictions or things that will allow me to get to inappropriate content. The internet was made for access. Everything we try to do as parents and as youth pastors and educators is going against the very purpose of the internet, which is to provide information as quickly as possible to as many people as possible.
The Thought Factory podcast is brought to you by Never the Same, cultivating students through biblical discipleship and spiritual disciplines using theology, community, and technology. Learn more at neverthesame.org.
We have a great guest in our studio today. Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about who this person is?
I am super excited to have the Chris McKenna in our studio today. And for those who don't know who Chris is, Chris began his acting career at the tender age of 7, and many would know him from One Life to Live. He was on that television series at the age of 12, and he has gone on to act in numerous roles. During his 3-year stint, Chris was nominated for a Soap Opera Digest Award as Outstanding Child Actor and 2 Young Artist Awards for Best Young Actor in a Soap Opera and Best Young Actor in a Daytime Series. Even though he's no longer a child, I still will give you a lot of credit for all your acting awards. So my first question for you, Chris, is what is the relationship between the use of soap in an opera?
One requires you to be clean, and the other is just horrible music. Do you get it?
I got it.
It's deep. Do you get it?
I don't know where else we're going to go with this interview.
So is this the same guy? Chris McKenna?
Well,
Soap opera?
I didn't look on Google for his picture, but
I think you've got the wrong guy here.
I don't.
You did this last time.
No, I just Google searched the guests that we're going to have, and I just assume that we have these A-listing type of people coming into our studio.
So, Chris...
We don't expect anything else.
Yeah, well, I'm confused here. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about if this is true and who you really might be?
So you're not
Are we off or on, or is this
6'3"?
you?
Well, I'm going to direct the rest of this conversation at you, Jeff, since you clearly know a lot more about what's going on.
I do the research.
More in touch with reality.
You don't specify who these people are.
You do what every kid does. You just Google it.
Exactly. He knows.
I know.
That's the whole thing. That's the whole problem, Jason. That's what we're going to talk about today.
That's right. Perfect segue.
On the Thought Factory.
That's right. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Chris McKenna, and
Got that right.
That much is true.
That much we've already established. Google was correct.
You were 7 at one point, right?
You also got that part. Okay. Tender age of 7. I can't say that's an adjective that's been often used to describe myself.
Anything beyond meat? Yeah.
That's right. Been born and raised in Michigan, and got a family here. We have 4 young kids, and right in the middle of what we're going to talk about here, I'm trying to raise them how to use technology and trying to teach others about it. But that's not the path I ever intended to be on. God has a great sense of humor, and started off in business, worked at Ernst & Young for a little over a decade, and enjoyed that. It was a good, fast, business-paced life, but was called into full-time youth ministry. I could point to the spot under the 131 overpass on Pearl Street where I learned that very clearly, that was the direction God was leading me as I was walking out to my car, parked where is now the YMCA, and left my position at Ernst & Young and went to work full-time at Cornerstone Church, where I led junior high ministry for a little over 6 years. And then for the past year, I've worked in a couple of roles, but in marketing for an internet safety company, but then also started a business of my own, Protect Young Eyes, which really birthed out of what I was hearing from a lot of parents in youth ministry, which was, Chris, help. My kid knows more about their device than I do. Help me understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what started off as a PDF document, which became a closed Facebook group, ultimately became a business and a website and a ministry to educate and help as many families as possible. So again, never the path I expected to be on, but I'm sure many who are listening, and even Jason and Jeff here, you could probably relate to some of those God surprises that ultimately end up being pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And Chris, we've known since his days in youth ministry, been connected, both Jason and myself, did a fantastic job, was a stellar youth pastor, very strong youth ministry, left a great legacy at that ministry. I know a little bit about that ministry just personally from a connection, but we're grateful for that. You've been a successful person in what you've done, and we love hearing about what you're doing now. Was a part of a little bit of your story, just knowing it in your transition out of the local church youth ministry into what you're doing now. And so we want to talk about that today, about this ministry and your passion in this area. So Protect Young Eyes, you talked about that, protectyoungeyes.com. That's your website.
That's right.
And there's incredible resources on that. We want to direct you to that right away. We want to mention this website several times because this has so much great information. So you shared briefly about its creation, how it started. Tell us a little bit more your story, how this all got going.
Yeah, I shared kind of the professional side of how things fell into place, but personally, I'm a man who, like many, but has tried to be very open with the fact that pornography is a part of my past and a part of my weakness, but having transformed away from that, there now in the digital age, knowing there's a huge opportunity to use, and it's not my own phrase, I heard it from a pastor named Jacob Aranza. He said, it's awesome when God takes misery and turns it into ministry. And I feel like for me, what was a real miserable stage of my adulthood and childhood, and that was cycling in and out of sort of addictive periods of time and consuming internet pornography, that to be able to speak to parents and to kids as to what that can look like, not in a way of drudging up the past, but in a way of God has a better plan for how we should use this gift of technology. When I speak, it's always out of a heart of technology is a good thing if we use it in a good, God-honoring way. The enemy loves to take good things and twist them for his purposes, to deceive us into thinking what is this is that. He's a master at this to that. And I want kids to look at technology as this is good. This can be a good thing. And I've traveled a few of those paths that took me away from what can be a good thing. I want to warn you away from those, and here are some experiences. So it's birthed out of a desire to help, but that desire to help goes way back into some early exposures. In elementary school, when I was exposed to things through magazines, like a lot of guys, but I find that I was drawn to it in a way that became very unhealthy. And so the internet then allows consumption of inappropriate content at a number of different levels in a way that none of us really, say us, old guys in their 40s, say like me, who can say that it's different the way that the enemy can come at our kids today. The doorways to reach the hearts of our kids in inappropriate ways are exponentially greater than the doorways that existed when I was a child. And so, yes, use technology. Yes, embrace it in ministry. Yes, embrace it in the home. But understand that using tech is a constant risk assessment and making sure that we're directing our kids to use it, and our parents and our staff, whatever role you find yourself in, to use it in a good way. It takes intentionality. So when I speak to parents and educators and others, I talk about, there's 3 places that we can land when it comes to how we use our technology. All the way on the left is the fear-based approach of, it's horrible, it's evil, I want to bubble wrap my kids and my students, and we're just not going to use it at all. That's not a productive place to be, because it does not prepare kids for the reality of the digital age that we live in. On the way right side, there's the I'll babysit kids with screen time and let them figure it out on their own approach, which is also not productive. because there are way too many on their own paths that kids will stumble into, and they're just not ready to handle. A lot of adults aren't ready for it either, but there's a spot in the middle that is the sweet spot between those two that requires you to push against fear and to push against pressure of culture and to do the hard work in the middle. And it's hard. So I want Protect Young Eyes to be a way to eliminate some of the excuses, and our educational ministry to eliminate some of the, I don't have time, I don't know where to start. Okay, I get that, but I'm going to point you in this direction to encourage you to do the hard work in the middle. Whether you're a mom or a dad or a youth pastor or a police officer working in the community, there's hard work in the middle to help our families to use technology well. And so that's why, a little more behind why it exists.
And in previous episodes, we've talked about the technology and how even the smartphone is only about 10 years old.
That's right.
And we hand that over to teenagers without any guidelines, without any former training in a sense, but it gives them access throughout the world and through things that they shouldn't be exposed to. And so what I love about Protect Young Eyes is that you're doing a lot of the harder work for us parents and adult leaders to do the hard work, if that makes sense. Like you are saying, if you are aware of what's happening through this piece of technology, through the internet, through this various devices that they are engaging with, if you're aware of some of these traps, then you have done the research. You're presenting that to parents, to youth leaders, and saying, if you're aware of that, then it makes that hard work a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And that's why I love Protect Young Eyes, mainly because I have young kids and I'm already aware of their desire to be on the device and the iPad and on my phone. And it's going, I want to limit the screen time, but I'm not going to eliminate the screen time. So when they are on the screen time, how are we protecting them as parents?
Yeah, for sure.
And having heard your presentation at a public school,
Right.
I was grateful to be in that audience and hear you. One of the things you talked about, you mentioned several websites or apps, and which ones had doorways into pornography. You mind sharing a little bit about that? I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, it's I think it's the third slide I put up on the screen after an introduction, and then I quiz the audience on, what's the legal age for kids to have their own social media accounts. And, a lot of people know that's age 13. I would put out in an audience of youth pastors to be very aware of that. I fell into this trap too. It's sometimes easy in youth ministry to get caught up in the trendiness of tech, but please don't encourage your sixth graders to open their own social media account, because I find that to be a little disingenuous, and I'm just not an advocate of kids under 13 and sometimes under 15 having their own social media. They're just not ready for it. So I think sometimes as youth pastors, having been in that world, we can fall prey to the, hey, let's everyone jump on the social media bandwagon. So it's sort of an aside, but that third slide is, I put 6 app icons up there. I think it's the Bible app, Pokemon Go, Pinterest, the Weather Channel, the Delta Airlines app, and one other. And I asked the audience, how many apps up here, if I try hard enough, could I find hardcore pornography? And they usually think it's a trick question, so they say, well, all of them, all 6 of them. And I say, well, it's actually 5. The only one I can't get to porn on is Pokemon Go. But yes, through Delta Airlines, and yes, through the Bible app. And I go through this exercise to show them how the default thinking that every person should have should be that every app a kid uses has a doorway to the internet, to a hidden Google search bar that they don't know about. That should be the default thinking until you prove otherwise. Because 9 out of 10 apps that are on all the iPhones or Android devices that are, in this room right now, I bet I could get to a Google search bar that will not obey many of the other parental controls you may be enabled on the device, like restrictions or things that will allow me to get to inappropriate content. The internet was made for access. Everything we try to do as parents and as youth pastors and educators is going against the very purpose of the internet, which is to provide information as quickly as possible to as many people as possible. And so it's just that awareness. It's not horrible. I'm not saying don't book your airlines through the Delta app or don't use the Bible app. I'm just saying be aware that there are ways that kids can use these if we haven't had direct and honest conversations with them about some of the dangers.
And I remember having either a conversation with you or coming across your resources, a blog post about kid games and the links at the bottom that you don't realize some of them are links directly to hardcore porn. And it's under the disguise of a game, but there's so many of them that kids young as 5, 6 are just clicking these links, and then all of a sudden something pops up. And so even to be aware of the apps, the games,
Right.
You think they're innocent, but kids are typically just trying to figure out what a touchscreen is, and they're clicking around going, I don't know exactly how this game works, but by touching it here, I jump, by scrolling over here, and they've figured out a way to get kids access to things that they shouldn't be looking at.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So we can help parents in that way to talk about apps and make sure that before any kid uses an app, that a parent has used it for 7 straight days. What you'll see after 7 straight days is what starts to happen with pop-ups that you may not see in using it just for 7 minutes. What starts to happen with additional content it starts to show you as you continue to play it, because there's sometimes a progressive nature that the app is learning how you use it, so it'll show you other things. So it's sort of the 7-day rule for every time you want your kid, and I use 15 as sort of my new number. Anybody under 15 who wants to use an app, as a mom or a dad or a youth pastor, a recommendation should be to use it for 7 days first. Don't just download it and not use it. Play with it for 7 days. And then extrapolate that experience to your 14-year-old and ask, is he or she ready for all of the different environments that I just experienced?
So, Chris, what is the primary concern you hear from parents today?
Yeah, so what I've been trying to do, I'll send out a Survey Monkey before an event to those who have registered for it, just to ask them this general question. And their choices range from screen time to inappropriate apps their kids might use, or pornography, inappropriate content. And so far, the parents that have filled out the survey, the primary concern of them is their young child running into inappropriate content, pornography of some kind. And people define that in a lot of different ways, but however they perceived inappropriate in that context, it seems to be the overriding concern that parents have. And it's a valid concern. The kids are especially, adults too, but kids are especially vulnerable to porn because of the way that their brains are wired. And so we have to be extra careful to protect an 8-year-old from seeing porn. Yes, we don't want 18-year-olds or 28-year-olds to see it either. But there is a neurology in 8-year-olds with their mirror neurons that encourages them to practice whatever they see. That's why they learn so quickly. Whatever you model for them as an adult, they are going to try to, through gross motor, act out what they see, whether it be through spoken language and fine motor or gross motor with their body. They're built that way to learn. That's why they soak up and learn things faster than adults. That makes it so critical to protect them, because when they see pornography, it becomes something they want to do, which is why nationally and internationally, you're seeing this horrible increase in the number of peer-to-peer sexual conduct cases that are being dealt with law enforcement and child safety officers and others. Not because these are bad kids. These aren't kids that are like growing up to be, or that were born predators. That's not it. They are simply seen, with the average age of first exposure being 8, 9, 10 years old, they're seeing and then they're doing, because that's what their neurology is compelling them to do. And so parents are correct in having that as a primary concern, and we need to do whatever we can to protect our own children, but also equip our parents to have tools to protect their kids so that they can prevent those kinds of early exposures.
So, Chris, on the protectyoungeyes.com site, you've got lots of resources for parents. Tell us a little bit about some of the things you have on there and how they can help. Because as you know, as if you're listening to this podcast, we're talking to primarily youth workers. And one of the roles that we play is to help parents.
That's right.
So what are the resources that you have on the website?
Yeah, between two primary places, both the website, which is going to be content that's updated fairly frequently because it's changing so often, but also through our Facebook page where we're posting almost daily. We're scrubbing, the internet and different sources for different trends in tech and how teens and others are using tech, and so we post out there regularly. The two most visited parts of the website is the app risks section, which is, if you go to it, it's just a grid of apps that explain then how kids use them, what's the app store say it's rated. Here's a video that shows you how kids use them, what some of the risks are, and kind of what my bottom line is for it at Protect Young Eyes. And that's obviously constantly being updated. There's also a spot where we go through all the parental controls for devices that kids use, whether it's a Mac or a PC, Android, iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, Kindle, Chromebook. I'm trying to get a Nintendo Swift so I can count it as a business expense. I haven't quite done that yet. But DS, smart TVs, whatever devices exist, making sure that parents know that they're all internet ready. Right? This isn't the Michigan Wide Web or the United States. This is the World Wide Web. That PlayStation is connected to the World Wide Web, and so enable the parental controls that come on it. And that's another very popular section, so that parents respect the power of those devices and to use the tools that often just come with them. They just need to be used.
Now, I know you've mentioned this. I think it'd be worth our audience hearing about great apps that are entryways for young users.
Yeah,
you've mentioned that. I think two maybe in particular. What?
Probably the most popular elementary school social media platform that I see used right now is Musical.ly, which is this 15-second looping, lip syncing. And it is social media. Kids need to be 13, yet repeatedly as I go to elementary schools, a large percentage of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And it's problematic because it's primarily girls who are using this app too young, and as girls are more vulnerable to predatory activity. And so, one of the realities that all kids live in, and I talk about 5 realities with parents, the third reality is that wherever the kids are is where the predators are. Because if I'm a sexual predator and I know that there's an app that is primarily used by 3rd and 4th and 5th